Good afternoon, everyone. How are we doing?
Very well.
Sounds a little dim. How are we doing, everyone, today?
Fantastic.
Woo-hoo. Much better. All right. My name is Dr. Roy, and welcome to Creating Binge-Worthy Media, Harnessing the Power of Streaming. A little bit about myself. I have a PhD in strategic media, and I also went to film school, so I'm going to be utilizing both of those concepts to talk about media today. I have experience in film, television, streaming, radio, podcasting. We're not going to get into the other things, but how to utilize all of that and why it matters in today's environment. So we're all hooked on streaming, right? Because more than 70% of Americans binge-watched on platforms like Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime. But who can tell me what is the largest streaming platform? Any guesses? YouTube. Okay, any other guesses? I guess Netflix. Netflix? Instagram. Okay, interesting. The answer is YouTube, so correct.
Oh.
YouTube, according to Nielsen ratings, has 38% of viewership on streaming. Netflix is second, so not bad guess. After that is Amazon Prime Video, Hulu, Disney Plus, and the other ones come in the marginal 1% because we have things like Peacock and other various forms. Now, YouTube is just not a recent phenomenon. In 2022, YouTube is a streaming competitor as Americans streamed 177.3 billion minutes of video on the platform in 2022. So how has YouTube changed the streaming incentive and how we create digital content today? Well, we don't only rely on film and television. A lot of the digital media productions have changed because it goes into various types of digital media productions such as music videos, product videos, podcasts, interviews, instructional videos, testimonials, how-tos, product reviews, traveling, vlogs, webinars, live streaming, and events. So we're no longer looking at streaming media as something that's film and television centric. Now, how does that medium of streaming change the production? Well, let's go back into communication theory. McLuhan said that the medium is the message. Now, what does that mean? We used to watch films predominantly in movie theaters alone. Now we watch films at home. We watch them on our phone. We watch them on our laptops and our TVs. We can watch them while we're filling gas. We can do them anywhere at any time because we choose how we're consuming the content. Because at the end of the day, like Machiavelli said, the end justifies the means. We used to watch at TV, and this is going to age me a little bit, we used to have a TV guide notebook mailed to our houses and check the ratings and the reviews and think, all right, well, I'm going to watch Friends this weekend, or I'm going to watch this. Now we don't need to rely on that physical format anymore. So through online distribution, the streaming medium intervenes the relationship between media producers and media users. So as a producer myself, I am one click of a hashtag away to see what audiences think about my content. Before, I would have to rely on critic reviews online, reading them through a newspaper, or listening to interviews with audiences outside of the movie theater on what they like. Now I get live time engagement of what they like, what they don't like, spoilers, and things like that. So we have the phases of productions, which are very typical: development, pre-production, production, post-production, and distribution. But how has the distribution medium changed the production method, do you think? Are these all in the sequence anymore? Any guesses?
No.
You think it's all the same, okay?
No, I know. I think it's different.
You think it's different.
Yes.
How so do you think it's different?
I think sometimes we go to distribution, we talk to audiences even before we start to craft endings to stories these days, so that whole narrative process is disjointed right now. 7 ways.
Correct. Any other guesses of how it's changed in streaming context? No? Okay. Well, what I will say is that it is no longer linear. It has become cyclical, like you said. The ends do justify the means. So yes, looking at our distribution model now, which is streaming media, we now rework what we want to do for step A. So if I know I want to release something on YouTube, I'm not going to sit there and use a film budget. I'm going to decrease my budget and plan accordingly and produce accordingly. That also means that virtual productions are now a thing. So you see right here, this is how they shot on a virtual screen. This is a set. Those are LED screens. This is not live. This is the Batman, The Mandalorian, and Dune, all post-pandemic world productions. All released, some Mandalorian obviously only in streaming, but these have all been released in theaters and then on streaming platform thereafter. So what does that mean for streaming content in terms of the production sequence that we had? We are actually using technologies such as LED screens, live editing, and color correction at the same time while we are filming. So a lot of the steps have been coagulated. They're being done simultaneously. For example, in The Mandalorian, you had editors on set, editing in live time that sequence that was just shot prior, color correcting on live time, and giving feedback to the direction team that, hey, this color isn't working or we missed something, versus in traditional production, you would have only the continuity supervisor just checking the script. The editor would get that months later and then say, oh, we missed something, and then you have to work with what you got. But here it creates an extremely cost-effective solution where you're combining production and post-production. It saves time and increases workflow. It also requires an extremely strong developmental phase. So if you don't have your base of the pyramid, none of this is possible, right? And it creates an extremely good organized production. It also increases efficiency, collaboration, gives a holistic view of the story. So now when actors are fighting a monster, they see what kind of monster they're fighting. They're not imagining it with the green screen anymore. And that creates better performances, better creativity, better collaboration. Again, it's cost effective because post-production is extremely expensive with CGI, VFX. The prices really do add up. So, which of the production stages do you think is the most important now that we go back to that timeline? We had development, pre-production, production, post-production, and then distribution. All right, let's show of hands. Who thinks development is the most important?
I think pre-production.
You think pre-production? Yeah. Who thinks production is the most important? Okay. Who thinks post is the most important? Who thinks distribution is the most important? Okay. Development is actually the most important because most scripts are rejected after the first 3 pages. Now, why do they get rejected? There's a lack of clear target audience. Who are we selling this to? Again, it goes back to the ends justifying the means of distribution. Does the Netflix audience care about what you're writing about? Why does this target audience for Disney Plus care? Why should we care for this demographic? When are we releasing it? Is this a holiday film? Those type of things matter. What is the takeaway and the purpose of it? There's also a lack of storyboarding process, which a lot of writers don't understand, that people at desks in Hollywood are not so much visual when you're giving them the scripts. So having a storyboard, a part of your development of this is how I plan and see this actually taking place, really helps them develop the story arcs, the conflict resolution, the narrative structure, as well as having logistics things planned out like the production plan and the budgeting, even in the developmental phase. Because if you're just waiting that, all right, my script is going to get passed, then I'll think about this, you are most likely going to get rejected once again. So that's how crucial planning and development really is, especially in streaming. Now, we have the binge-watching phenomenon, and it's defined as perpetual viewership while losing track of time. So who here has binge-watched 1 or 2 episodes at a time? Please raise your hand. All right, keep them raised if it's been 3 to 4 episodes at a time. Keep them raised if they've been 5+ episodes at a time. Keep them raised if you've seen an entire season in one sitting. Guilty. What show was it? Please go ahead and tell me what shows they were.
I watched The Walking Dead for 2 days straight.
All right, what was the next one?
I just watched, what was that show called? It was the reindeer show.
Oh, reindeer.
Was it called Reindeer? About the
Baby
stalker? And I watched that in one day.
Okay.
That was only 6 episodes, but still,
Okay.
I watched the entire season.
Still? All right, what was that show you watched?
Season 2 of Only Murders in the Building.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Mine was House of
It's a
Dragons.
good show.
So that's the one that I saw back to back and I finished. All right, so according to Nielsen ratings, Americans streamed more than 15 million years worth of video content in 2021. Let that just think in. 15 million years worth of video content. Binge-watching phenomenon became a search term of interest in February of 2013 after Netflix's home production, first of its kind, House of Cards. Before that, this term, sorry, let me go back. This term wasn't invented. So what makes binge watching on a streaming platform a phenomenon compared to, let's say, watching the news for hours, whether it's a sports game or elections or reading a book for hours on end? I used to do that reading Harry Potter and wouldn't put it down until I finished it. So what makes binge watching a phenomenon versus all these other types of socio-behavioral activities? Any guesses? You want to take a second? No? All right. Well, it's because binging and streaming are synonymous with each other. You lose track of time, and through streaming, you don't have distractions. So if we were to watch on TV, you had commercial breaks. You were interrupted. When you are reading a book, you may have to go to the bathroom to put it down. There are more interruptions in your viewing experience, and it pauses your narrative escape, where you are no longer submerged in the narrative world, but you're back into your own reality. But with streaming, you can watch hours on end. Netflix will ask you if you're still watching, and you just keep saying yes, and you keep clicking. You're one click away. No commercials, no distractions. You're at home. You're comfortable. You don't have to go somewhere. You don't have to drive anywhere. So it's impacted streaming audiences significantly because audiences control viewership. Before, when you used to watch TV, a show like Friends, you had commercials, you had a DVR even to fast forward at a certain point, right? Now, you don't have commercials. You can even watch shows like Kaleidoscope. Has anyone seen this show on Netflix? Well, it's non-sequential. What do I mean? Think about like Star Wars, how they came out of order. You can watch any episode out of order and have a different viewing experience. And that's what people talked about on social media, talking about the different colors, which represent the different episodes, and who watched what order first, and how did that reveal of the whodunit impacted them on their viewership. This is only available and doable on a streaming platform. You couldn't do this on TV, and you couldn't do this in film. You have a Star Wars, but again, you have different generations watching at a different time, so it's not exactly the same. It changed the socio-behavioral viewership. You have things like watch parties. Anybody see Game of Thrones during a watch party when the finale came out? Or any type of event that would be based on an opening of a streaming show, or like, hey, House of Cards is back on, let's all watch it together. It's a group viewing experience similar to that in the theater that you would get, but in a more intimate setting because you're choosing the people you're watching it with. Again, smart devices are convenient. Like we see people watching things on their phone, on their tablet, on their watch. Any type of streaming content, specifically since YouTube is the largest streaming platform, is visible anywhere. So again, audiences hold the power. The conversations are online, and it creates a shift from, like I mentioned, about the critic reviews to audiences' opinions and feelings, where the creativity and production of the storytelling are all readable online on social media. I'm one hashtag away from looking up Kaleidoscope and looking up, there were actual hashtags, pink, red, white, and based on which spoiler of the character who had done the heist, so to speak. So the storytelling and narratives have changed in how they create these types of streaming shows. Again, social media lifetime audience feedback for content creators is also very important to gauge and change up the marketing strategy. So if something's not working, I can just revamp my PR and marketing and see what else may work, right? Because the algorithm will work differently at that time. So today we're going to explore what makes streaming media binge-worthy and the storytelling techniques that produce high engagement. So how do we develop a binge-worthy media? How do we create an algorithm that's based on that? Because Nielsen ratings will give you numbers. They'll tell you what's the most watched. They'll tell you how many people viewed it, what country, but nobody tells you why and what's the audience's perception of it. So here's some of these stories that have been in the top 10 for a while. And what do they all have in common? Conflict. Every single story has a conflict. It's either man versus God, man versus nature, man versus man, or man versus himself. And these conflicts, or a combination thereof, create larger engagement based on many different studies. And they all have different storytelling techniques. Number one is genre. So any guesses on what the most predominant genre in streaming platforms is today?
Horror.
Or, yeah, I was gonna say.
Okay, horror, crime.
Mhm.
So it's actually drama and comedy, according to Nielsen ratings. So those two genres, as you can see, here's crime, and then there's a mix of drama, true crime, action, suspension, all that comes into the drama genre. Again, language has no bar. With streaming platforms, we're able to view content from all over the world. Who's seen Squid Games? Okay. Who's seen A Dark from Germany? Money Heist from Spain? Yep. So, like again, language holds no bar. Before, with traditional cable television, you wouldn't be able to prescribe that unless they distributed it to different countries, right? But now with streaming and so many different platforms and options, I can watch any which content that I would want. Now, another storytelling technique is the fact of hooks. How do we hook in audiences? Because attention spans are very less. The average time you have to get an audience's attention is 8 seconds. 8 seconds on social media to put on your trailer, your teaser, and get them to watch your content on the streaming platform. It's not a lot of time now. So you need to also focus on the plot, the characters, the narrative, and the emotional arc, as well as the point of view. So as you can see, shows like the Menendez brothers has caused a huge change where their case is now being reopened just based on the documentary and the audience's perception of it. So you have a change of point of view just because of the streaming. So these are all very interesting things, and it's causing a lot of changes in the mindset of people that has never been seen before. Now, in order to develop this, that's why we need to see how storytelling affects audiences and why we binge these type of content. So the role of anticipation in streaming series, like we mentioned, drama, suspense. Who has seen The Boys? Okay. We see how much suspense plays into that, and there's how horror jump scares or character reveals or emotional arcs that come into play for that. There's also flashbacks in The Boys. It shows you how the negative character grew into the negative character, and you kind of sympathize for them. So it shows characters that are no longer black or white, but they're gray. And now the audience wants to know more. Who has seen Stranger Things season 4? Or any season of Stranger Things, right? So the villain here, again, there was flashbacks in that story because now you see this big bad guy and you want to know, all right, how do you get bad? What's the story? And then they go into episodes and you keep wanting to learn more. Okay, now what is he going to do? I see his motivation. I see that he's this person and how he affects these other characters. How is he going to do that in the future? Again, big thing is cliffhangers. Every single episode even is considered a mini movie, where you have a beginning, middle, and end. You have all of these aspects of storytelling through point of view, character arc, and at the end of the episode, it leaves you with a question of who's done it, what's next. So in our brain, we want to know. Like, I want to know who killed this guy. I want to know who wins. So I'm going to click on next just to find out. So cliffhangers curate curiosity. Again, this also leads to social media conversations because if you are one hashtag away from looking something up on Twitter, you also can be spoiled. So you have to be careful with that, and it sparks conversations about who was right and who was wrong and what do people think about these characters. And these types of shows also lead into in-person situations where before you can be detached from media, but now the media produced on streaming, you can convert that into an escape room. You can convert it into a Halloween maze. So the content of media on streaming has infiltrated into our daily lives, where we can go to an event prescribed to that theme and be a part of it, and leads to subsequent types of productions. So I'd like to look into this clip here from The Penguin. Has anyone seen Penguin? Okay, so I won't spoil it.
Ma? I'm gonna take care of you, Ma. You know that, right? I'd do anything for you. And if you don't believe me, well, you don't gotta. 'Cause I'm gonna prove it to you. Just don't give up on me.
I know what I lost, what he took from me.
Don't fucking touch her!
I just want to know, was it worth it? Oswald Cobb, man of the people.
Okay, so how does this series start? This is a 1-minute video that was all over social media. And just to give you a heads up, The Penguin is the #1 watched streaming show as of right now. So can someone tell me, how did this series start in this video? What do you guys remember?
Kid.
The kid.
This is
Okay.
a kid.
All right. Now, what was the hook that drew you into that kid?
He was okay.
Yeah, anybody. Go ahead. You can go ahead.
No, for me, I was just trying to figure out would the kid have anything to do with it. And then for my brain, it was sort of like, oh, he's talking how he was when he was younger, and now that he's older. But it was interesting how they drew you in because it's the adult, but this is how the adult felt when he was a little kid.
Exactly. So we talked about flashbacks. Perfect. Wonderful. We talked about flashbacks. We talked about anticipation. You see that within the first less than 8 seconds here on this video. We all know who the Penguin is, big baddie of the Batman DC universe. But we see him as a kid, and you're like, what? You can't imagine a villain as a kid. What's going on there? Then you find out that's his character story and how he became to be Big Bad Penguin. So we have the hook. Now, describe the story's premise in 1 to 2 sentences. What was the main concept that you guys gauged from this 1-minute video? We have the character of the Penguin. We know it's from his childhood. Any guesses? What's the main concept? What do they want you to see? Who are the antagonists? We saw a lady in there, right?
Females.
Female. Okay, so what kind of conflict did that bring up? The man versus man, right? And this is the kid talking to who? He's talking to his mom. He said, Mom, I got you. So we have multiple man versus man, and he's trying to prove something to himself. So it's man versus himself as well. So you have multiple conflicts and storytelling techniques to get you in. So if you have kids that maybe are not familiar with the DC universe, Batman, or any of the intellectual property, you still are using these storytelling techniques to hook them on the streaming show. So the show's premise in 1 to 2 sentences is the backstory of the Penguin and how he became the ongoing villain and who his enemies were at that time and how he built up his empire. We talked about some of the main characters. What do you think made them compelling? The antagonist, any of the characters, or you fast forward to where you see him in present day. Anything about the way his character was developed that made him compelling? Do you guys know that the actor who played the Penguin is actually this skinny, and his whole look is based on prosthetics? So, this is the actor, Colin Farrell. He played the Penguin.
I'm gonna take care of you, Mom. You know that, right?
Right, sorry about that. But yes, what makes him compelling is that you know that Colin Farrell is the actor, and now he looks like the Penguin. And now you're interested in how he's going to perform it. And the way that they reel you in is to show you things like behind the scenes, how he got into character and the storytelling elements of how they produced it in terms of wardrobe, in terms of costume, in terms of character and makeup and all other things that go into this type of a production. Now, in terms of cliffhangers and the suspense element, what do you think kept the viewers coming back for the next episode? This is a teaser for the final episode, as you can see. So at this point, most audiences have already seen the other 8 episodes, or waiting for the last one, or sorry, 7 episodes, waiting for the last one. Or there's people like you guys haven't seen the Penguin, only 2 of us have.
Yeah.
So for you guys who have no idea what the other season had entailed, what would make you want to come back and watch this show?
Just want to know what happened.
Right,
I just want to know what happened.
Exactly.
I want to see how this little kid plays out from his past to his present and how that looks. And his mom, I would love for it to hear what his mom has to say. Maybe the last episode will bring the mom to the forefront.
Right. What made him into a villain? He seems like a normal kid wanting to do well for himself, his mother, and wanting to do good. So what led that switch of him being an antagonist? How did he become evil all of a sudden? So that whodunit, what happens? I need to know the end. I think that's a common human emotion, sentiment that resonates across target audiences, across all ages, across all languages. We have an innate need to know. We want to know what happens at the end of the day. And then once we know, we can move on. Yes.
And I was just going to say, for me too, it's just the ticking sound, the whole production of it. That
Yes.
was just like, tick, tick. It's like, whoa.
You're waiting for the bomb to go
Oh,
off.
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So that draws you in. If you take out that and just have flashes of different scenes, perhaps it wouldn't have drawn me in.
Right.
Plus, the acting from that kid was incredible in the clips that we saw. So he was just a ruthless kid. I'd like to know how old he was, things like that. I've never seen it before. So.
Right. So the soundscape, like she mentioned, the ticking time bomb, it's creating this incessant, oh my God, I need to find out, oh my God, boom.
Yeah.
And then now you're hooked. Now you want to see it.
Well, I mean, they use Colin too. I mean, we want to go back and see what happened to him.
Right.
You know, how he plays him. I mean, he's a beloved character or celebrity, so putting him in that kind of spot, you like to see how he performs.
Right. Did you see what he was wearing, the little kid?
He was wearing a suit.
What kid wears a suit?
Yeah.
Well,
So-
there's obviously other things going on because I was even thinking how many little kids actually go to their mom and say, "Don't worry, I got you."
Right.
This is gonna, and I'm like, okay, where's Dad? Because obviously this kid, like he's overprotective. Something is going
Yes.
on, and so you already get the seeds of his trauma.
Triggers,
Yeah,
right?
You get them immediately, and yeah, I mean my kid's 11. He doesn't wear a suit,
Right. So just these developmental thought process that went into this production of what he's going to wear, what this kid looks like, those are all written in the script itself. When you're describing a character and have an actor coming in to read, they know what they're going to be wearing. They know what they're going to look like. They know what the age group is and what that past emotional trajectory is for them to be able to portray that character in the first 3 pages. So all this stuff needs to be well developed in the beginning stages in itself. So it shows you how important of a very, very famous character, but it's now the top streaming show and how it was developed. So for today, I'd like you to choose how you're going to develop a binge-worthy media production. And again, we're going to go back to the basics. The first step is a production who remembers development.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to develop something. So I'd like you to choose your streaming platform, select where you want to create this. It could be a TV series, could be a podcast, could be an interview, any type of streaming media. And then you're going to fill out the outline, use the worksheet to structure your idea, focus on what makes the streaming content binge-worthy, and at the end, please share with the class. So I'd like to give you all 5 to 7 minutes. Again, your end product is just a concept. This is just development. You could throw it away later if it doesn't work for you. But I would just like your ideas to get to a piece of paper. So I'd like you to begin. I'll give you 5 to 7 minutes, and then we will share with the class. All right, are we all done? Pretty much. I wanted to start presentations from actually the back of the room first, if you don't mind. So please, if you would like to stand, you can, but share with us your ideas. There are no silly ideas, I promise you.
Go for it, Gabriel.
Okay, for step 1, that is identifying the media platform. I want to online.
Okay.
Basically, because I feel like everybody's on it. And my concepts, I went with man versus God, man versus man.
Okay.
And the title of the show is God Real. And I couldn't decide on which one I read.
It's okay.
Target audience, anyone who has some kind of interest in the existence of God. So the plot summary is trying to find out if God exists. I went with Dr. Hyde.
Yes.
Yes, because he's a scientist. And the book is a troubled scientist who tries to read the Bible for the first time. And then I went with, for techniques, I went with flashbacks and emotional arcs. Advocated suspense. And that's it.
And I think that's next.
Great, thank you.
Would you like to share? Sure. I went with Netflix because I feel like people have that platform. It's going to be a man versus man. I am not a big fan of suspense anymore.
Okay.
It's getting on my nerves because I'm sick of the constant anxiety that I have in my life on my own. I don't need to add to it. So for me, character development is more important, and I tend to think in my sexist mind that women are probably more interested in a program that would be a drama between a mother and a daughter. It'll be broken, and it's just going to explore the relationship about how they started off, a very close relationship, told in the style of present and flashbacks to see what broke their relationship. So at the end of every episode, I guess we'll have a clue that's revealed as to why these people were so close and who they are.
Love that. Amazing. Thank you.
Now this is funny because I even lent you a pen. We kind of have the same
really?
story
Oh,
here. So I'm going.
I can't read it.
I know. That's what I mean. Like,
It's too dark.
so I'll go with a podcast. This is really man versus himself, because similarly, like I'm sick of man versus man, and like everybody's at each other's throats. And again, reality is just too much for me. The title of the show is Doesn't Ride Roller Coasters, and the target is a comedic. The target audience is people who need a laugh, but mostly single people. And the plot summary is a series of unfortunate dating events.
Oh, okay.
So basically,
we have a good hook.
I'm not saying that this is already in the works for me or anything, but just basically a few women talking about their bad experiences dating, say in your midlife era. Just we'll say that. So the draw for the audience is just the relatability and the humor of it all. I would draw upon flashbacks and cliffhangers, flashbacks being like what made them single at this stage of life, and what are their triggers that kind of set them off in this realm. And then the cliffhanger being, or I've got another round of dates coming up this weekend, we'll, catch you next time kind of thing, and we'll talk about those. So, that's it.
That's amazing. I love it.
I went a totally different direction. I picked Netflix. You said it was second highest after YouTube, and I
Yes.
feel like Netflix takes chances. So I thought Netflix would be good. I did Man versus Himself, and why I said it could connect with audiences because I was looking at like perfection horror kind of thing. Because I just saw the movie The Substance last week, and so I did either like Dying to Be Perfect, this teleshow, or like perfection horror. Target audience, a genre would be horror documentary. So I was thinking like they could take like movies like The Substance and then compare them to real life situations where people had bad plastic surgeries or bad, just things gone wrong. A lot of people have been dying from this, going to other countries.
Kind of like Botched.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Okay.
I love Botched.
Yeah.
Like Botched, but on like a more horrific scale, kind of thing. I feel like Botched sometimes takes a comedic tone.
Yes.
There was a man I think in Argentina who just like killed himself because of like bad facial hair implantation. So, and again, I'm all doing this because I just saw The Substance and it was like very, very disturbing. So, and I thought the host could be Demi Moore because she was in The Substance and she's like a 60-year-old woman playing a 50-year-old. So she looks amazing, but she could be the host. The hook would be the real life horror of it, like comparing the movies to the real life situations. I thought, target audience, I said Gen Z through Gen X. I think teenagers up to like people in their 50s would like it. And I would do strong character development and flashbacks like before and after of real life people. strong visual teasers would be to incorporate the techniques like teasing what horrific plastic surgery thing we would see next.
I love that.
So yes.
Great, thank you. All right.
I know, really.
So I want to do a TV series on Netflix because it's most diverse, and I thought maybe they'd take a chance on. Well, this isn't anything. This is dumb. Okay, so anyway, I would do man versus God versus man versus himself. Why coming to terms with the trauma that we face as individuals and coming to terms with our identity and how that plays out in faith development or loss of faith. Title of the show would be Unworthy. It would be a drama, and the target audience would be anyone who has suffered loss and had to get over it or move on or that sort of thing. Which I know that's not a really good target audience, but I'm thinking maybe those who are in there. They've lived enough life to where life hasn't turned out the way they wanted it to, and so they have to deal with it. A couple characters I thought of is a woman starting a lucrative career in real estate at 60 years old, going to school on the side. She's brilliant, but she doesn't know it because she's not self-assured. So you kind of start there. And of course, I'm going to use backstory then to show. Another character is a ex-military guy who is abused by his wife on a consistent basis. And the hook would be the backstory, why is this happening to these people? And what I would do is kind of have a group of people and use flashbacks and emotional arcs to basically each episode would kind of focus in on one person, and then kind of at the end, it's kind of how are all these people connected? What is what brings them all together and that type of thing. So that's what I was thinking.
Great.
All right, here we go. Okay. WrestleMania.
I thought about it, but so no, I went with a series on Netflix. This would be a little of man versus man and man versus himself. It would be called NIL 100. So it would have to deal with college sports now. NIL is a whole big thing, and this would follow maybe 5 or 6 coaches and how their recruiting changes now because now NIL plays a factor. So you would have 5 or 6 coaches, and you would also follow, high school athletes as they're going to recruit. So I would think the genre reality drama. Target audience would probably be that 18 to 49 male demo sports fans. The main characters would be the coaches and the high school athletes. What I would try and hook them with is each episode would end with them recruiting them, but you don't get an answer if they're going to come or not. You have to see the next episode to see that. That's what I got.
I like it. It reminds me of The Good Side. I think what was that film? It's called The Blind Side. Sorry.
Yeah.
The Blind Side. Yes. I'm sorry. I didn't want to skip you. Oh, you didn't want to? Okay. All right. Go ahead.
He's like, I'm just a
So I'm that student who needs an individual study plan, okay? Because I just found my own way to do the task.
Okay. Sure.
So what it did for me is it set me off thinking about my own work because I'm in the middle of writing.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, wow, I think I'm still doing the traditional 3-act play or the traditional 5-act. And so it got me thinking, how do I now have to go back to truncate the script in order that we can have it more episodic so that then we have mini movies instead of the one where you leave the big climax either for the middle or for the end.
Right.
So that's how this spoke to me. And so that's around, I had the script in mind, already thinking how I could rework that so that it would better fit today's agenda, which is not. And I'm starting to wonder what's going to happen to all the Shakespearean plays and all the Greek tragedies and so on, because the format is almost completely changed.
Yes.
And so then I thought I would bring the final episode to the front
Okay.
and rework each scene into a mini episode
Wow.
to meet the binge-worthy approach. And then I would use things like flashback and suspense then to go back and fill that out. So it's very helpful for me because I just have to rethink the whole script at this point.
I'm glad. Thank you. It sounds like it's kind of like Kaleidoscope where I talk about the different episode narrative structures.
Right.
Great.
All right. So I thought of doing a limited series on Netflix because I really like limited series. They're easier to manage and finish, and I think they'll get larger viewership and be more financially successful. And I have to think like a producer. And I choose Netflix for the reach, and it would be cost effective than YouTube because I would hope to get more money for my production from Netflix than from YouTube. And then the show would be man versus man and man versus himself, and it would be in the drama and dark comedy type of genre. My target audience would be in the 20 to 35 age group. And then the title of the show is Lottery, and it focuses on 4 people who win $1 million lottery, and it kind of follows them in a 5-year or a 10-year period. Because I always like wonder what happens to people who win, the 1 million lottery, like the people in Pennsylvania who won $1 million from Elon Musk. So what are they going to do? I always think about that, right? I would like
I'll
to
let you know.
So the main characters of the show are going to be, or the miniseries are going to be, an elementary teacher, a waitress, one truck driver, and a dentist. And we would follow those 4 characters and see what happens to them in 5 years' time. I would use cliffhangers, I would use emotional arcs, because there's going to be a lot of drama with families, some develop new habits, some become investors. There would be strong character development, and how I would incorporate these techniques in moving the episodes would be, I would use like a lot of like emotional drama, cliffhangers, like some of the characters get into trouble, those types of plots. I guess step 5 is for home, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Denise, would you like last but not least?
Okay, I'll make mine real quick. Mine would be a YouTube. The platform would be YouTube, and it would basically be like a one-person show. The one-person show would act out different characters for the actual thing I'm thinking of. So it would be man versus himself, because it's almost like an inner body, outer body experience, in the sense that the one person who's sort of like the hostess then acts out what they think other people are thinking, that kind of thing. So it's like a talk show in so many ways, but that the talk show host is playing the characters, answering the questions, or being interviewed by themselves. So, or that
Vice
kind of
versa.
thing. Yeah, exactly. And the name of my show would be WTF. Now what? That's all from me. WTF, now what? Or ponder this. I know what you're thinking, that kind of thing. So it's on that kind of premise. And then I put that it would be like plot summary, just everyday thoughts, and then how different people would act that out. And I should explain it this way. It's like seeing a headline on an article on Yahoo or something, and then reading the comments and being able to see the person who's making the comments. And that's how I kind of like thinking about it. And then I put main character would be just one person, but yet they're acting out who the other people would be and what they would say. And I put social media, strong emotional tie, making it real quick, things like that. So it's just, for me, it's almost like what you see, like even on TikTok now. It's like you have someone and they act out that person. So it might be their dad, or it's like, this is how your dad acts when you're dating, things like that. So that's what my whole YouTube, and I would pick one topic. The one topic would be traffic, or let's say, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of the shows would be focusing on how different people, different characters, male, female, older, younger, whatever, would handle any kind of traffic disturbances or something.
I love that. Then it's a comedy.
Yes.
So,
yeah, a little bit of
other
that.
largest genre. All right. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Now, for homework, I like to use your developmental plan, work on a checklist for the pre-production phase. So I want you to create a storyboard of how do you think you would shoot this for a 60-second clip. So the trailer we saw was from the Penguin. It was exactly 60 seconds. And it's on a streaming platform, but it's being talked about on social media. So if you were to create this development and draw it up, it could be stick figures, it could be a poster, could be any type of artistic design that you want. But how would you put this into a 60-second clip to sell to somebody? That, hey, here's my idea. But chances are, like you remember, you're going to get rejected in the first 3 pages. So you might want to have a visual component to it. And how would you put that in a 60-second clip? So that's it for today's class. I'm open to any questions, and that's my reference right there. Do you have any questions?
I do.
Yes.
So I've been thinking how this works in real life. When they do this live broadcast, like the streaming, and they're course correcting as they go.
Yes.
So I'm wondering what technique, how it happens in the background. Is it almost like you're watching a live show and then there's a delay? Like, do they use delays so that you could go and correct color and pivot the plot and things like that? How does it work?
So
I know it just doesn't go take to life or whatever.
It depends on the distribution. Again, so if you have something like Twitch, which is the streaming platform for gaming, it is completely live, unfiltered. People are cursing or doing things that are faux pas on regular television. That is uncensored, unfiltered, depending on that person's channel. There may be demarcations to their channel if they use too much profanity, for example, or they say things that can get them canceled. So there are checks and balances in terms of that. Now, in terms of podcast streaming, let's say a Joe Rogan show, they actually prefer a more inclusive environment where he gets fact-checked by people that you don't see on camera, but he'll say like, hey, I think so-and-so, cited X amount for this statistic. And then somebody like, actually, Joe, that's wrong. It's not 10, it's 50, right? So that creates a more human experience. So if I'm going to stand here like I know everything, that's not true because everything's changing constantly, right? So the fact that we have humans correcting us is actually more welcomed. So instead of having everything cut and edited to perfection, it creates that type of distance between the audience, the creator, and the person who's absorbing that. So the content creator wants to feel close to their audience members, and audience members feel like when you are making mistakes just like they would, they're more likable to listen to you, you become more likable, and to hear your experience. So again, it depends on the platform. Sometimes there are delays, like there's conferences, then yes, there are a little bit of delays in, let's say, a few minutes, where I have been a part of seminars and conferences for global government events. Those are definitely edited, and so what you're seeing in live time is actually a 15-minute delay.
Yeah. And so just before another person goes, how then does this play into the traditional screenwriting that we have always known, the 3 acts, the 5 acts, and how is that affecting what writers are doing now as well as producers?
It also goes into balance of power. So you have a Christopher Nolan who is a writer-director where he then has power beyond the writing and developmental phase.
Yeah.
Sometimes the writers in the developmental phase don't have the power in the final production. It could be the director who has a final say, so it could be the producer. So it depends on, again, the distribution and your credibility, your amount of investment. There are directors like Nolan who have also invested and become producers to increase the value of what they say goes. So then you can stick to your script. If you're just sometimes okay with giving off your rights and writing something and sending it off, be ready for it to be changed and revised as necessary. Any other questions? Yes.
I thought about this because when you showed The Boys.
Yes.
So like my husband and I were obsessed with that show.
Okay.
And then he was like, you love Homelander. Have you ever seen Banshee? He was in that. So I watched a new show and it made me want to go back. I looked it up to make sure, like Banshee ended in 2016. So do you think this is common where someone like me, I watch a new show, I really like the character, I go back and watch a show that ended almost 10 years ago. I was inspired to watch an older show. Do you think that's common with streaming?
That's extremely common throughout any type of production today. When you look at Disney Plus, everything is based on intellectual property. So it could be former live-action remakes of The Lion King. It could be things based off of books like The Trolls, so box trolls. And intellectual property, if you can see through Marvel, DC, action heroes, superhero stories, it's all based off of previous written content. So yes, sadly, I know I'm being reported, but a lot of Hollywood is kind of deferring back to what's already been done and proven. And it's very little and very rare for a new concept film to get approved, sadly. Either it's historically backed, like you see in 1917 in a film, or you see documentary limited series like you see the Menendez brothers or a Ted Bundy or things like that, or now you see the Zodiac speaking, where I remember, oh yeah, I heard about that, but whatever happened, or I heard my parents talk about this. So it does spark that memory inside of us. So you can see it from iterations of when we talked about the House of Dragon. Game of Thrones ended years ago, right? And I doubt any of the people that watched Game of Thrones actually sat there and read the books. But because you had that experience of watching Game of Thrones and enjoying that storytelling, none of these characters have any relevance to that whatsoever. This is 1,000 or 100 years before that. And so it talks about the origins of these houses. And so it still brings back that target audience for that intrigue, but also gives room for a new audience to come. And be like, oh, well, like, to be honest, I didn't watch Game of Thrones until I was always kind of like, I don't want to be like everybody else, I don't watch Game of Thrones. And then my brother convinced me, and I binge watched all 6 seasons in like 2 weeks. So that's the power of streaming.
Did you do it backwards? Like, did you watch House of Dragon first and
No,
go back?
no. I watched Game of Thrones first, and then House of Dragon. I was kind of waiting for season 2 to finish because life happened and I couldn't watch House of Dragons, and I saw seasons 1 and 2 together. So yes, I am seeing a resurgence of previous IP being utilized, and you see that with the Disney live action remakes of The Lion King, The Mermaid. It's things that I grew up watching as a child, and now I see kids. If you turn on Disney Channel right now, they have something called like is it Paw Patrol or something, where it's like based on The Lion King, but it's new characters and things like that. Or there's so many different iterations of formally created IP content. So yes.
I have to say that Game of Thrones, the only reason I binged on that was because everybody around me had watched it, and I could not participate in any conversation, and then my family, and I was just like, okay, let me catch up, that kind of thing, and that's probably the only reason. For me personally, I would have never had time to sit there and actually think, use my brain on that kind of drama, whatever it was. But it wasn't until someone said, my family was like, you've got to see it. And I was like, great, okay. But by then it had ended, so I was like, all right, I'll binge it.
And the binge watching phenomenon, kind of to reiterate what you're talking about, it's very active viewership. So it's not like you're snoozing and Netflix is asking if you're still awake.
Right.
You're actively involved in that storytelling process and you're invested in it where you can't step away. And that's creating that behavioral change where if you're in a movie theater, if you had to go to the bathroom really bad, you would risk missing out on that 5 to 10 minutes. But now because you have streaming, you can pause and come back and you're not missing out on the story. Wow.
Interesting.
All right, well, that's all I have for you. So thank you so much for listening.